It was just another quiet evening in the suburbs. The sun had dipped low behind the rows of maple trees, and the streets were glowing under the soft orange light of the street lamps. A teenage boy, about 16, was walking home after basketball practice. He had his gym bag slung over his shoulder and earbuds in, lost in his thoughts. His sneakers scuffed the pavement rhythmically as he made his way through the familiar neighborhood he'd lived in for years. He wasn't in any hurry. Practice had gone well, and he was thinking about dinner and how tired his legs felt. He loved basketball, and his dream was to make it big one day. His mom always told him to stay focused on his goals, keep his grades up, and never forget where he came from. She worked long hours, but she always made time to watch him play whenever she could. As he crossed the intersection near the local park, a police cruiser turned the corner and slowed down. The flashing lights weren't on, but the car rolled to a stop beside him. Two officers sat inside watching him closely. The boy pulled out one earbud, unsure if they were just passing by or wanted something. One of the officers called out from the driver's side. "Hey, kid, come here for a second." The boy paused, looking confused. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked politely, trying to sound calm. "Just need to ask you a few questions," the officer replied, stepping out of the car. "Where are you coming from?" "From the school gym." "Basketball practice," the boy said, lifting his bag slightly as proof. His heart started to beat faster, though he didn't know why. The second officer got out too, walking around to the other side of the car. "You live around here?" "Yes, sir. Just a few blocks away." The officers exchanged a quick look. "You mind showing us some ID?" the first one asked. The boy frowned slightly. "I don't have my school ID on me. It's in my bag, I think." "Go ahead and get it," the officer said, his tone firm. The boy reached for his bag, but before he could open it, the second officer raised a hand. "Slow down," he said sharply. "What's in the bag?" "Just my gym clothes and shoes," the boy said, now visibly nervous. "You can check if you want." A couple of people walking their dogs stopped to watch. The air grew heavier, quieter. The boy could feel their eyes on him. He didn't understand why this was happening. He hadn't done anything wrong. The first officer spoke into his radio, giving a quick description of the teen. The boy caught words like possible suspect and matches description. His stomach dropped. He had no idea what they were talking about. "Sir, I think there's a mistake," he said softly. "I didn't do anything. I'm just trying to get home." "Keep your hands where I can see them," the officer ordered. He froze, his hands slightly raised. "Okay," he said, his voice shaking. "But can I please call my mom? She's going to worry if I'm late." "Not right now," the second officer said, stepping closer. "We'll sort this out in a minute." The teen could feel his throat tightening. His hands were trembling a little. The flashing lights from the next block reflected faintly off a car window, making everything seem even brighter and louder in his mind. He took a small step back, and immediately one of the officers barked, "Don't move!" "I'm not," he said quickly. "I'm just scared." More people had stopped now. Neighbors, joggers, someone with a phone out recording. The situation was growing tense, even though nothing had really happened yet. The boy stood there still, trying not to cry, trying not to say anything wrong. One of the bystanders called out, "He's just a kid." "What's going on?" But the officers ignored it. The teen swallowed hard. "Can I please just call my mom?" he asked again, quieter this time. The officer sighed. "What's your mom going to do right now?" "She's an agent," he said quickly, his voice trembling. "She works for the—" But before he could finish, the officer interrupted him. "Let's just stick to the questions, all right?" "What's your name?" he answered, his words barely coming out. He could feel his chest getting tight. He just wanted to go home, to be safe, to have his mom with him. He didn't know why this was happening or what he could say to make it stop. The officer asked more questions about where he had been, what time practice ended, who could confirm his story. The boy answered everything honestly, but it didn't seem to matter. The officers kept glancing at each other, whispering, checking something on their radios. Finally, one of them said, "We're just going to hang tight until we get a confirmation." He nodded slowly, not sure what else to do. His legs felt weak. He sat down on the curb, his bag beside him, trying not to make any sudden moves. The night air felt cold now, even though it wasn't. He could hear the faint buzz of crickets somewhere nearby, mixed with the low hum of the police car engine. He thought about his mom and how she always told him to stay calm if he ever got into a tough situation. "Always be respectful," she'd say. "Never raise your voice. Never give anyone a reason to see you as a threat. He remembered her saying those words one morning before work. She had kissed his forehead and told him she loved him. Now those words echoed in his head like a prayer. A few more minutes passed, but it felt like an hour. The officers talked quietly to someone over the radio. The boy didn't understand most of what they said. Every second that went by made him more anxious. Finally, one of them turned to him again. "You said you live close by. What's the address?" He told them, and the officer nodded, still suspicious. "We'll have someone check that." He nodded again. "Can I please call my mom now?" "She's probably on her way home." The first officer hesitated, then finally said, "All right, go ahead, but keep your hands where I can see them." His fingers were shaking as he pulled his phone from his pocket. He scrolled to his mom's number and hit call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. She didn't answer. He tried again. A voice from behind one of the bystanders said softly, "Poor kid. He's terrified." The officers didn't react. They just stood there, watching him closely. Finally, his mom picked up. "Hey, honey." Her voice came through, warm and steady. "Everything okay?" He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Mom, the police stopped me. They think I did something." "I didn't, what?" She said sharply, her tone changing instantly. "Where are you?" He told her the street name quickly. She didn't ask anything else. "Stay right there. I'm on my way," she said and hung up. The boy lowered the phone slowly. He could feel the lump in his throat. He whispered to himself, "She's coming." The officers exchanged another look. "Who's your mom, kid?" She works for the government," he said carefully, unsure how much to say. That answer only seemed to confuse them more. "What kind of work?" one of them asked. "She's an agent," he said softly. They didn't respond. Instead, they went back to their car to check something again. The boy sat there holding his bag tightly, watching the lights flicker against the pavement. He just wanted his mom to show up. He knew that once she did, everything would be okay. A few more cars passed by slowly, people staring at the scene. One woman stopped her car and asked through the window, "Is he all right?" The officer waved her off. The woman frowned and drove away. It was a long few minutes of silence after that. The boy's mind drifted to the sound of his mom's laughter, to the way she used to help him with homework late at night. He imagined her pulling up any second now, stepping out of her car, and making all of this stop. He didn't know it yet, but she was already on her way, driving faster than she ever had before, with her badge on the seat next to her and fire in her eyes. The night was about to change completely. The sound of tires screeching broke through the stillness of the night. The boy's heart leaped as he saw headlights turn sharply onto the street. A black SUV pulled up fast, stopping just a few feet away. The door flew open and a woman stepped out, his mother. She moved with calm precision, but her face showed both fear and fury. She wasn't just a worried parent. She was a trained federal agent. Her instincts were sharp, and the scene in front of her told her everything she needed to know. The 2 officers stiffened when they saw her. They didn't know who she was yet, but something about her presence made them hesitate. She walked straight toward them, her badge already in her hand. "That's my son," she said firmly, pointing at the boy. Her voice was steady but cold. "You want to tell me what's going on here?" The boy's shoulders dropped with relief when he saw her. "Mom," he whispered, barely holding back tears. One of the officers straightened up and said, "Ma'am, please step back. We're in the middle of an investigation." "An investigation?" she repeated, her voice low but sharp. "On what grounds are you detaining a minor walking home from school?" The other officer tried to respond, fumbling for words. He, matched the description of someone we're looking for." Her eyes narrowed. "Description? Or assumption?" Neither officer answered. The bystanders were still there, some recording on their phones, others watching silently. The tension was thick. The boy stood frozen, unsure if he should move closer or stay put. His mother took a slow breath and held up her badge. "I'm a federal agent," she said clearly. "And that young man you're harassing is my son." She said it so evenly that the words felt heavier than if she had shouted. Both officers went silent, eyes darting from the badge to her face. "Ma'am, we didn't know," one began, but she cut him off. "That's exactly the problem," she said. "You didn't know, but you assumed. You saw a black teenager walking home and made him your suspect. Do you have any proof he did anything wrong?" The first officer looked down, embarrassed. "We received a call about a break-in nearby. The suspect was described as a young male in dark clothes." Her eyes flashed. "And that's it? That's all you needed to pull your guns on a child?" The crowd murmured. The officer's posture softened, guilt now showing on their faces. The boy stood quietly, tears starting to fall as the adrenaline faded. His mother walked over and placed a protective arm around his shoulders. She looked at him, then back at the officers. "You could have destroyed his life tonight," she said, her voice breaking slightly for the first time. The silence was heavy. One of the officers mumbled, "Ma'am, we were just following protocol." "Then your protocol needs to change," she replied, "because protocol without judgment leads to tragedy." She turned slightly toward her son and whispered, "You're okay now? I'm here." He nodded, still shaking. The crowd that had gathered slowly began to disperse, though some stayed, behind still recording, knowing they were witnessing something bigger than just a misunderstanding. She faced the officers again. "I need your names and badge numbers," she said flatly. Her voice carried authority, the kind that came from years of service and training. The officers hesitated but complied, one of them scribbling the information on a small notepad and handing it to her. "I'll also need your body cam footage from this stop," she continued, "and I'll be filing an official complaint through your department. You can expect a call from my office tomorrow morning." The officers exchanged nervous glances. "Ma'am, we didn't mean any harm," one said, his voice small now. "You meant to show power," she replied. "But tonight you're going to learn what accountability looks like." She took her son's bag from the ground and turned to him. "Let's go home," she said softly. He nodded, still too shaken to speak. They walked to her car, her arm around his shoulder, every step a mix of anger, relief, and exhaustion. Once they were inside, she locked the doors and turned to look at him. "Are you hurt?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "No." His voice was small and cracked. "I thought they were going to." He couldn't finish the sentence. She reached over and pulled him into a hug. "I know," she whispered. "But you did the right thing. You stayed calm. You kept your hands visible, you survived, and that's what matters." He held onto her tightly, finally letting out the tears he had been holding back. She rubbed his back and tried to stay strong, but her own hands were trembling. The thought of what could have happened made her sick. After a few minutes, she pulled away just enough to look at him. "I've seen a lot in my line of work," she said quietly. "But nothing prepares you for seeing your own child in danger. I need you to promise me something." He wiped his eyes and nodded. "Okay. Promise me you'll always tell me where you are, even if you're just walking home. I'll always come for you." He nodded again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I promise." She started the car and drove slowly, glancing in the rearview mirror at the police cars still parked on the street. The neighborhood looked different now, less safe, less familiar. Every porch light seemed a little dimmer. As they turned onto their street, she could see neighbors peeking out their windows. Word had already spread. She parked in the driveway and turned off the engine. They sat in silence for a moment. The weight of what had happened hung in the air. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, do you think they'll get in trouble?" She sighed. "They'll face questions, but the truth is, real change takes time. What matters is that you're safe, and we make sure others don't go through the same thing." He looked down. "It's not fair." "No, it's not," she agreed softly. "But fairness isn't automatic. It's something people have to fight for." They went inside, and she made him something warm to eat, though neither of them had much appetite. The house felt quiet, almost too quiet. The clock ticked loudly in the kitchen. He sat at the table, picking at his food while she typed something on her laptop. Notes, dates, badge numbers, everything she could remember. Her training made her efficient, but her heart made her furious. She looked up after a while and said, "I'm filing a report first thing in the morning, and I'm going to make sure this doesn't disappear like so many other cases." He nodded, though his eyes were distant. "Will it help?" he asked. "It will," she said firmly, "even if it's just a start." That night when he went to bed, She stood at his door for a long time, watching him sleep. The steady rise and fall of his chest reminded her how close she had come to losing him. The image of the officers standing over him replayed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't turn off. In her bedroom, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her badge lying on the nightstand. She had always believed in the system, in justice, in the power of the law to protect people. But tonight she saw the cracks. She saw how easily things could go wrong when bias replaced judgment. The next morning came too soon. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, and for a brief moment, everything looked normal again. But as she sipped her coffee and glanced at her phone, she saw that the video from the night before was already online. The caption read, "Cop stopped teen for no reason until his FBI agent mom shows up." It had already been shared hundreds of times. Comments flooded in, people outraged, others defending the police. She scrolled through the words and felt a mix of anger and sadness. The world had seen what happened, but now it would have to decide what to do with it. Her son came into the kitchen, still tired, but calmer. "Everyone's talking about it," he said quietly. "Even my friends from school." She set her coffee down and looked at him. "Then we'll use it," she said. "We'll use it to start a conversation, to make people see what's real." He nodded, unsure what that meant yet, but trusting her completely. Before they left for the day, she hugged him again, tighter than before. "You did nothing wrong," she said softly. "Never let anyone make you believe otherwise." He nodded. "I know." As they walked out the door together, the air felt a little lighter. They didn't know what the next few days would bring, but they knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just their story anymore. It had become something bigger, a spark that might finally make people listen. The story spread faster than anyone expected. By the next day, local news channels were talking about it. The video that a bystander had taken had gone viral overnight. People shared it with captions like, "This could have gone so wrong," and "Justice has a mother's face." It had touched something deep in people, anger, fear, and hope all at once. At school, the boy felt everyone's eyes on him. Some students came up and told him they'd seen the video, saying how brave he was. Others just stared awkwardly, not knowing what to say. He didn't feel brave, he just felt exposed. He hadn't asked to be in the spotlight. He only wanted to play basketball, go to class, and live like everyone else. At lunch, his best friend sat across from him and said, "Man, my mom showed me that video. She was crying. Said your mom's a hero." He managed a small smile. "She kind of is," he said quietly. "But I wish none of it happened." Meanwhile, his mother was getting calls nonstop. Reporters wanted interviews. Advocacy groups wanted to meet her. Even her supervisors at the bureau had reached out, offering support while also reminding her to be cautious about public statements. She knew what that meant. They wanted her to keep quiet. But silence had never been her way. She knew how many mothers didn't have the chance to show up in time, how many children didn't make it home. That thought kept her awake at night. So instead of staying quiet, she decided to speak. That evening, she sat with her son at the kitchen table. "How are you holding up?" she asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. Everyone's talking about it. I just want it to stop." "I know," she said softly. "But sometimes the only way to make it stop is to face it, not hide from it." He looked up at her. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to talk," she said. "Not just about what happened to us, but about what keeps happening to others. Maybe if people hear it from someone inside the system, they'll finally listen." He didn't say anything at first. Then he nodded slowly. "You always told me to stand up for what's right. I guess that means we have to too." She smiled, proud but also scared. She knew what came with speaking out. It could affect her career, her reputation, but some things mattered more. That weekend, a local community group invited her to speak at a town meeting. It wasn't a huge event, just neighbors and parents wanting to talk about police safety and racial bias. She agreed. When she walked into the hall, the crowd stood and clapped. Her son sat in the front row watching her, nervous but proud. She stood at the podium and took a deep breath. "I'm not here as an FBI agent tonight," she began. "I'm here as a mother who almost lost her son because someone made an assumption." The room was silent. You could hear the sound of her voice echo against the walls. "I've worked in law enforcement for years. I've seen how fear and bias can cloud judgment, but last night I saw it from the other side. I saw what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones you fear." Her voice shook slightly. "If I hadn't shown up when I did, I don't know what would have happened, and that's a thought I'll never forget." She looked down for a moment, composing herself, then continued. "This isn't about blaming every officer. It's about demanding better. Training isn't enough if it doesn't come with empathy. Laws don't mean anything if we forget the people they're meant to protect." The audience nodded. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Her son sat still, his heart swelling with both pride and sadness. After she finished, people came up to thank her. Parents shared their own stories, their own fears. Some officers who were there approached her too. One young cop said quietly, "I'm sorry for what happened. I'm trying to do better." She shook his hand and said, "That's where it starts," but not everyone was supportive. The next day, she received an anonymous message online accusing her of turning on her own. Others said she was exaggerating. Some even questioned her son's story. It hurt, but she didn't let it stop her. She had faced worse in her job. Still, seeing her son's name thrown around online made her stomach twist. He saw it too. "Mom, people are saying mean stuff. They don't even know me." She sat beside him and said, "People fear what they don't understand, but you know the truth. We know the truth. Let that be enough." He nodded, but it was hard. The comments replayed in his head when he tried to sleep. He started having dreams, of flashing lights, of voices yelling. Some nights he woke up sweating. She heard him once and went into his room. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." A few days later, she was called into her supervisor's office. He looked serious but calm. "You've caused quite a stir," he said. "A lot of people are talking about your speech." "I just told the truth," she replied. He leaned back in his chair. "You know the Bureau doesn't usually encourage agents to make public comments about police incidents." "With respect," she said firmly. "This wasn't just a police incident. This was my son." He nodded slowly. "Off the record, I understand. Officially, I have to remind you to be careful." She thanked him and left the office, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. If the truth made people uncomfortable, maybe it needed to. Meanwhile, her son was beginning to heal in small ways. His coach reached out, telling him to take his time getting back to practice. The team even made a small gesture. They dedicated their next game to him, wearing wristbands that said respect. It meant more to him than they probably realized. At home that evening, his mom cooked dinner, trying to bring some normalcy back. They sat together, talking about school, basketball, and small things. But every now and then, the silence between them said more than words could. "Do you ever wish you didn't work in law enforcement?" he asked suddenly. She looked up. "Sometimes," she admitted. "It's hard to fight a system from inside it. But if people like me don't, who will?" He thought about that and nodded. "You're really brave," she smiled gently. "I learned that from you." A few weeks passed. Things started to settle, though the story was still being discussed online. She began helping organize workshops at local schools, sessions where officers and students could talk openly. She brought in other parents and community leaders. The goal wasn't to attack anyone, but to listen, to teach, to bridge the gap. At one of those events, she watched her son stand up and share his story for the first time. His voice was soft but steady. "I used to think the police were just supposed to protect people," he said. "Now I know they can make mistakes too. But I also learned that speaking up can make a difference." The room was quiet. His mom watched him, eyes full of pride. He had grown stronger even through the pain. Afterward, one of the students approached him. "Hey, thanks for saying that. My brother went through something like that too. I didn't know how to talk about it until now." He smiled for the first time in a while. "You're not alone," he said. That night, as they drove home, his mother reached over and squeezed his hand. "You did something important today," she said. "You turned something painful into something powerful." He looked out the window at the city lights. "Maybe it'll help someone else," he said quietly. "It already has," she said. Back home, the world felt a little calmer. They still had work to do, and they knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But they had something stronger now: hope. The next morning, as the sun rose, she stood by the window, sipping her coffee. Her son walked in, backpack slung over his shoulder, ready for school. "Big day?" she asked with a smile. He nodded. "Yeah. We're having a debate in class about fairness and justice. I think I've got something to say about that." She laughed softly. "I bet you do." As he left for school, she watched him go, the same quiet street stretching out before him. It was the same walk as before, but everything about it felt different now. He walked taller, slower, aware, but not afraid. She whispered to herself, "Keep walking, baby. Keep walking." And as the morning light spread across the street, it felt like a new beginning, not just for them, but for everyone who had watched that moment unfold and realized something had to change. The flashing lights from the police cars painted the street in red and blue, reflecting off nearby windows. The young boy stood frozen against the wall, his hands trembling. His heart was racing so fast it hurt to breathe. He could hear the muffled voices of the officers, their radios buzzing with static and distant chatter. The sound of people murmuring nearby made it worse. He felt trapped, scared, and alone. He tried to explain himself again, but one of the officers barked at him to stay quiet. The cold metal of the patrol car pressed against his back as he stood still, trying not to make a single wrong move. He wanted to cry but held it in. His mind ran wild with questions. Why was this happening, and why didn't they believe him? He hadn't done anything wrong. He just wanted to go home. Then through the chaos, the sound of a car pulling up fast broke through the noise. Tires screeched slightly as a black SUV came to a sudden stop near the scene. The door opened and a woman stepped out with sharp, determined steps. She didn't shout, but her presence was strong enough to make people pause. Her heart was pounding too, but her face showed only calm control. She had spent years learning how to keep her voice steady, even when fear clawed inside her. She walked closer, lifting a badge from around her neck. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," she said clearly, showing it to the officers. Then she pointed toward the boy. "That's my son." The words hit like thunder. For a moment, everything stopped. The radios, the whispers, even the wind. The two officers froze, glancing at each other in shock. The younger one took a small step back. The older one's face went pale. The crowd of bystanders went silent, holding their phones mid-air, unsure what to do next. She stepped forward slowly, her eyes locked on her son. "Put your hands down, sweetheart," she said softly, her tone changing completely. It was no longer the voice of an agent, but that of a mother trying not to break apart. The boy lowered his hands shakily, his chest heaving with relief. The officer nearest to him mumbled, trying to find words. "Ma'am, we received a call about a suspicious individual in the area. We were just what?" she interrupted firmly, her tone still calm but sharp enough to make him flinch. "Drawing a weapon on a child who was walking home? Did you even ask for identification? Did you check your description before escalating this?" Her voice carried a quiet authority that made everyone listen. She wasn't yelling, but her words had weight. The officers looked down, fumbling for explanations. One of them started to speak again, but she cut him off. Just don't. You have body cameras. I want that footage preserved. Now." The crowd began whispering again. Some people had recognized her face from local news reports. She was known for her work in federal investigations, respected and well-spoken. The irony of the moment wasn't lost on anyone. The mother of an FBI agent had just found her own son in the same terrifying situation she had spent her career fighting to prevent. The woman turned toward her son, kneeling slightly so she could look him in the eye. "You okay?" she asked quietly. He nodded, though his voice cracked when he tried to answer. She pulled him close, hugging him tightly. It wasn't just a hug, it was a shield, a silent promise that she would never let this happen again. When she stood, she faced the officers once more. "Names and badge numbers," she said. Her tone was no longer emotional, it was pure professionalism now. They hesitated, and she gave them a look that made hesitation impossible. They complied, writing them down and handing them over. She took photos of their name tags as well. One of the officers stammered, trying to recover his composure. "Ma'am, it was a misunderstanding. We thought he matched the suspect's description." "What description?" she asked. "Did you get it over the radio?" Did it mention anything beyond the word teenager? Did it say what kind of bag he had? What direction he was walking? What time it happened? Or did you just see a black boy in a hoodie and decide that was enough? Her words weren't loud, but they hit with precision. The officer couldn't answer. The other one shifted uncomfortably. The air was heavy with embarrassment and guilt. The mother wasn't there to humiliate them. She just wanted them to understand the weight of what they'd done. She took a deep breath, her tone softening slightly. You have a responsibility to protect everyone, including kids like him. If you can't tell the difference between a threat and a teenager walking home from practice, then you need to rethink your training. The officers looked away, their confidence gone. One of them nodded quietly, unable to meet her eyes. The crowd around them murmured, some recording still, others just watching in stunned silence. The mother called her field supervisor on speakerphone, explaining the situation clearly and calmly. The sound of her professional tone contrasted sharply with the trembling fear that had filled the air minutes earlier. Within moments, her superior assured her that the matter would be officially reported and reviewed. After ending the call, she turned to her son again. We're going home, she said softly. The boy nodded, clutching his backpack tightly. The bystanders made space for them to pass. As they walked away, people whispered words of support. Some even clapped quietly, though she didn't stop to acknowledge it. She just wanted to get her son home. Once they were in the car, silence filled the space between them. The mother reached over and gently touched his shoulder. You did nothing wrong, she said. Do you understand that? He nodded slowly, staring out the window. His reflection looked tired, older somehow, as if the evening had stolen something from him. When they got home, the boy went straight to his room. She watched him go, her heart aching. She knew this wasn't something that could be undone with an apology or a report. It was a wound that would take time to heal. Later that night, she sat in the living room typing up her official statement. Every word was measured, factual, but behind the precision lay deep emotion. She wrote about the call she received, her arrival at the scene, and the action she witnessed. She didn't exaggerate or accuse, she simply told the truth. It was enough. As she finished, she leaned back, staring at the screen. She had seen many cases in her career, some heartbreaking, some infuriating, but none had ever felt this personal. This one had reached into her own home. Her phone buzzed with messages from colleagues and friends who had seen the videos online. Some offered support. Others expressed outrage. She appreciated their words, but she didn't reply. All she could think about was how close she had come to losing her son over a misunderstanding that never should have happened. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. The boy came into the kitchen quietly, avoiding eye contact. She poured him breakfast and sat beside him. You don't have to talk about it yet, she said softly. But when you're ready, we will, together. He nodded. After a long pause, he said, Mom, when they had their hands on their guns, I thought I was going to die. His voice was small but steady. She felt tears sting her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She reached for his hand and held it tightly. That's why we're going to make sure they learn from this, she said. Not just for us, for everyone. He looked at her, finally meeting her gaze, and for the first time since the night before, a small hint of comfort appeared in his eyes. They sat in silence for a while, letting the quiet morning wash over them. Outside, the world was already buzzing with news of what had happened. The video had spread quickly, sparking conversations in schools, offices, and police departments across the city. But inside that small kitchen, all that mattered was that a mother and son were together, safe, and determined to turn their fear into something meaningful. The weeks after the incident were quiet in some ways, but loud in others. Social media buzzed with discussions about the video, interviews, and news articles. Some people called it a wake-up moment. Others debated endlessly about policing and bias. The mother and son tried to focus on normal life, but they both knew things had changed. Nothing would feel the same after that night. At school, the boy noticed how people treated him differently. Some classmates whispered, staring at him in awe, while others approached him with curiosity and questions. He didn't like the attention, but he realized he had a story that mattered.
Slowly, he began sharing his experience with close friends,
Telling them about the fear, the confusion, and how his mom's arrival had saved him. His mother encouraged him gently, reminding him that sharing the story could help others understand and prevent similar situations. We can't change what happened, she said, But we can make sure people learn from it. He nodded, feeling both nervous and determined. At home, she had started documenting everything, notes, dates, and even a journal about the emotions they both experienced. She wanted to be prepared if the incident escalated or if it sparked any legal discussions. It wasn't just about accountability. It was about making sure the experience served a purpose beyond their own relief. The community began to respond. Some parents invited them to speak at school events about bias, safety, and communication with law enforcement. The mother accepted cautiously, knowing the impact her words could have. Each time they went to an event, she and her son shared their story honestly, never exaggerating, never downplaying the fear and tension. They emphasized respect, awareness, and the importance of understanding. One evening, after a long day at a school workshop, they drove home together. The boy looked out the window quietly. "Mom, do you think things will actually change?" he asked softly. She glanced at him, her hands gripping the steering wheel. "I hope so, sweetheart. Real change takes time. But every time someone hears our story, every time they realize how close this came to being a tragedy, it plants a seed. Change starts with awareness." He thought about that for a while, then nodded slowly. Then maybe it's worth it. At home, they tried to bring normalcy back to their lives. The boy went back to basketball practice, schoolwork, and hanging out with friends. His mother returned to her duties, but she kept a closer watch, always making sure he was safe. The nights were quieter, but every now and then, memories of that night would surface, reminding them how fragile safety can be. The police department eventually reviewed the incident. They interviewed officers, examined body cam footage, and listened to community feedback. Public statements were made about the need for better training, especially regarding bias and engagement with minors. While the family wasn't directly involved in the outcomes, they watched closely, feeling a cautious hope that something meaningful would come from it. The boy began using his experience to encourage others. In school, he joined a student committee focused on community awareness and safety. He helped organize events that promoted dialogue between students, parents, and local authorities. He spoke about his fears, his relief, and what he had learned from having a parent who could step in when needed. He emphasized that respect, patience, and communication were powerful tools for preventing misunderstandings. His mother supported him silently, proud but also protective. She knew the journey was not without challenges. Public scrutiny, online comments, and the general stress of reliving the incident could weigh heavily. But she also knew her son was growing stronger because of it. Each time he spoke up, each time he shared, he reclaimed a part of himself that had felt vulnerable and powerless. One evening, they sat together on the porch, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. The boy sipped his water quietly, watching the sun sink behind the trees. "Mom, do you think other kids have gone through this and didn't have someone there?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes, and that's why we have to do what we can. Every time we speak, every time we share, we remind people to be careful, to listen and to understand. Not everyone has someone to step in like I could." He was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. Then he said, "Then I want to help. Even if it's small, I want to make a difference." She smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "You already are. Just by being here and telling the truth, you are." Over time, the story became more than just an incident between a teenager and police officers. It grew into conversations in classrooms, community centers, and online forums. The mother continued her work, balancing her duties with advocacy and support for her son. The boy, once paralyzed by fear, began walking taller, more confident and aware of the power of his voice. He continued to play basketball, but now he also used his platform as a student to promote awareness. He organized discussions, helped with school projects on safety and bias, and even shared his experience during school assemblies. His story inspired others to speak up, to share their fears and hopes, and to understand the importance of dialogue. One evening, while they were putting away dishes after dinner, he turned to her. "Mom, do you think people will ever stop judging too quickly?" She laughed softly, ruffling his hair. "Maybe not completely, but we can teach them to pause, to think, and to see the person, not just a description." "That's a start." He smiled, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. The fear that had once gripped him now fueled a determination to change the world in small ways, starting with his school and neighborhood. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The incident became a reference point for local discussions about community policing, bias, and youth safety. The mother continued her career, never forgetting how personal the lessons had been. The boy grew stronger, wiser, and more aware of the complexities of the world, carrying both caution and courage in equal measure. At home, their evenings often included quiet conversations, shared meals, and moments of reflection. They talked about school, friends, work, and life lessons. The bond between them had grown even deeper, forged in a moment of fear and strengthened by their shared journey of understanding and advocacy.